Hello, I'm Sarah Wiskirchen, and today I will be discussing what to expect on your administrative review. First, I want to thank you for taking the time to participate in this discussion to hopefully prepare yourself and your team for your upcoming administrative review. Secondly, please feel free to contact me or your nutrition program specialist, also referred to as your reviewer, about any questions that might arise. Okay, well, let's get started. Some of you may have gone through an administrative review before, so this may be more of a review for you. For those of you that have not been through an administrative review before, the AR is constructed of three areas. First, the offsite, followed by the onsite, and concluded with the post-review. The offsite review will cover the NPS notifying you of the administrative review, the offsite assessment questions, resource management questions, the free/reduced application process, and preparing the menu documentation. The review process will then evolve into the on-site review, which is where the NPS will arrive on-site to conduct on-site observations, review program documentation, and interview staff about program operations. After the off-site and on-site reviews have been completed, the post-review begins where the NPS will complete the review and, if applicable, the corrective actions will become available for revisions. Once the corrective actions have been addressed and approved, the NPS will complete the review and the AR will have then been complete. To begin, I will discuss the offsite review. As many of you are aware, the ARs are now on a 5-year cycle. Each school year, we provide a list of local education agencies, also referred to as LEAs, that will be reviewed during that school year for the administrative review. Please make sure to check that so that you can begin preparing for the AR as soon as possible. Once it has been determined that your school is up for an AR, the NPS will be in communication, either phone or email, with the authorized rep. The authorized rep is an individual who was selected by the school to be the designated contact individual and can access the web applications. And the NPS will be in communication with the authorized rep to schedule the administrative review. This usually happens between 6 to 8 weeks prior to the on-site review. Once a date has been confirmed by both the NPS and the authorized rep, the NPS will email the confirmation of date letter, the administrative review checklist, and instructions on accessing the web application's offsite questions. The NPS will also be requiring the meal compliance risk assessment tool to be completed for each site selected. Your NPS will be in communication with you when they require these questions to be completed by. We will go into further detail about these topics in upcoming slides. First, the confirmation of date letter contains the following information: the date or dates of your review, the building or buildings that will be reviewed, the month of review, the week of the target menu review, the date of the exit conference, the offsite question instructions, and the NPS contact information. The number of buildings that will be reviewed depends strictly on the number of buildings operating the National School Lunch Program and School Breakfast Program. If there are less than 5 buildings in the district, then only 1 building will be required to be reviewed. If there are more than 5 buildings in the district, 2 buildings will be reviewed, and so on. There are many factors that we consider when selecting the building or buildings that will be reviewed. A few examples of these factors depend on the risk levels, such as multiple age or grade groups, per meal pattern, high or low participation, alternative meal locations, etc. We also consider when each building was last reviewed, if there are any additional programs, such as the Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Program, the After School Snack Program, or other programs, for example. I will also like to add that if you find that the selected week that the menu review will be conducted has a pre-scheduled day or days that the breakfast or lunch will not be served, please notify your NPS as soon as possible so that a different week can be selected up to their discretion. To move on, I will now discuss the other document provided, which is the AR checklist. This document outlines and summarizes the areas that will be reviewed throughout the AR process. It also provides details and resources that have been found to be helpful to schools in the process of preparing the required documents. Please pay close attention to the due dates and details in this document, as it is important for the MPS to receive the required information upon those selected dates. This will ensure that the review process is completed smoothly and quickly. The more organized the required documents are, the quicker the review process should go. That also means less time the MPS will need to spend on site, and that can be a win-win for all. Here is an example of the AR checklist. Once the confirmation of date letter and the AR checklist are received and reviewed, you will now begin the next step of the review process. These next steps include the offsite questions, preparing the free or reduced meal applications, and the menu documentation. You can find step-by-step instructions attached in the email with the confirmation of date and the AR checklist email. I will now begin to go through the offsite questions, how to prepare the free or reduced meal applications, and how to prepare the menu documentation. I will begin with the offsite assessment tool. The authorized rep can access the offsite questions through web applications. These offsite questions cover all reviewed topics during the AR. All questions must be completed in detail prior to the on-site review. If the NPS finds that they have not been addressed or more information is required, they will be in communication with you prior to the on-site review. The NPS will review the submitted answers or documents prior to the on-site review and will validate the provided information throughout the on-site review. To access the offsite questions on web applications, please follow the provided link here to the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, specifically to the Food and Nutrition Services webpage. Here you can find this link to web applications. From there, log in and go to Compliance. In the Compliance section, you can access the school year, which will take you to the review forms, which can be seen here. From review forms, you will be able to find these series of forms. Within each series are multiple questions related to the district practices about each topic that will need to be addressed. As you can see here, they cover all aspects of the program, from benefit issuance to professional standards to resource management. There will also be documents that will need to be attached to those questions. Please follow all directions specified in each question. Please also take note of the building section. This section is commonly overlooked. Please click on this and it will take you to another section of questions that will need to be addressed. With the building selection, you will be able to find questions related specifically to the building or buildings selected to be reviewed. It is required that these questions are answered for each building being reviewed. Please take notice of the Meal Compliance Risk Assessment tool that is listed here. This was mentioned previously in the presentation as being used to determine the risk level for that building. These are a series of questions that can be found when the Meal Compliance Risk Assessment tool is clicked. Please answer each question for the applicable building. As you can see here, this section addresses the programs being operated at the specific or the specified building, the age or grade group at that building, and so on. Each question has a number correlated with each answer selected. These numbers are totaled by the tool and a score is then reported. This score notifies the NPS if the building is at a low or high risk level. The NPS will then take the highest score for the building or buildings and determine which to conduct the breakfast menu review and meal observation. The NPS will notify you of the selected building and buildings. I will now go into resource management. I will discuss the maintenance of the nonprofit school food service account, the paid lunch equity tool, the revenue for non-program foods, and indirect costs. First, I will discuss the maintenance of the nonprofit school food service account. The nonprofit school food service account, where all revenue from all food service operations conducted by the SFA principally for the benefit of the school children is retained and used only for the operation or improvement of the nonprofit school food service. The NPS will verify that the funds from this account are used for approved purposes such as food, equipment, and staffing costs related to the operation of the meal program. The NPS will also check to see if funds from the account were used for purchasing land or buildings, as well as construction of buildings. These examples would not be allowed uses for these funds. The NPS also ensures and reviews that all revenues and expenditures are accurately tracked separately from all other transactions, and our allowable net cash resources do not exceed 3 months average operating expenses, reviews transfers, equipment purchases and grants, internal control procedures, year-end statements of revenues and expenses, general ledgers, balance sheets, invoices, and receipts. Please have this information ready for the review process. Now that we discussed the maintenance of the nonprofit school food service account, we will now move on to the paid lunch equity tool, also known as the PLE tool. The PLE tool is a tool for the local education agencies, also known as LEAs, participating in the National School Lunch Program, and it is required and is used to ensure sufficient funds are provided to the nonprofit school food service account for meals served to students not eligible for free or reduced price meals. Each school year, the USDA will determine the target weighted average price for paid lunches in the United States and update the PLE tool accordingly. This updated tool, on average, is released to LEAs each May. It also must be completed annually to evaluate the school's paid lunch prices and meet USDA minimum requirements. There are 3 options to meeting the USDA annual completion and evaluation requirements. Option 1 is completing the PLE tool in Excel format. This Excel PLE spreadsheet can be accessed through the DESE Food and Nutrition Services webpage, as you can see the link and screenshot here. There is also a webinar which outlines how to complete the PLE tool in Excel through the provided link here. Please take note that there are 2 separate webinars for the PLE tool. The first is the Excel spreadsheet, which is circled, and the second is option 2. Before moving on to option 2, here is a screenshot of the Excel PLE tool, which takes the weighted average paid lunch price for the district, the monthly number of paid lunches for October, the paid lunch price during that school year, and then generates the weighted average price and the required price increase for that applicable school year with the 10-cent cap. I would now like to refer you again to the previously mentioned PLE webinar that will be helpful in completing the PLE tool in Excel. The second option to meeting the USDA annual completion and evaluation requirements is completing the PLE tool in web applications. Provided is a link to the DESE FNS, the Food and Nutrition Services webpage, where you can find the Web Applications PLE webinar. The Web Applications PLE tool automatically pulls information from the building applications and the submitted claims. Please note that if you decide to practice option 2, the application packet must report the correct student paid lunch prices, as the tool automatically pulls that information from the building and buildings application packets. So please pay close attention to that, as that is very important information. To access the PLE tool in web applications, you can find it located with the Application Packet tab. As you can see in the screenshot of the application packet, it is located about midway down the page and labeled as Paid Lunch Equity Tool. Now the third option is the PLE exemption. To practice the PLE exemption for school year 2021, the school must have a positive or 0 balance in the nonprofit school food service account as of December 31st, 2019. Then LEA is exempt from the PLE tool for that applicable school year. If this is applicable to your school, you are meeting USDA requirements and will not need to complete the PLE tool nor increase student paid lunch prices for that school year. This is to prevent the nonprofit school food service account from exceeding the 3 months operating cost. You can access and complete the exemption form found on the DESE FNS webpage through the provided link. This form is required to be submitted and approved by the state agency each school year that is applicable. This is the PLE exemption form that can be found on the DESE FNS webpage. We have now completed our discussion on the PLE tool. We will now begin discussing the revenue from the non-program foods. I will begin by defining non-program foods. It includes food and beverages sold in a participating school other than a reimbursable meal and purchased using funds from the nonprofit school food service account. Types of non-program food sales are adult meals, extra milk, and other food items outside the reimbursable meal, such as a la carte, vending machines, fundraising, vending meals, catering, and school stores. With the exception of only selling extra milks and adult meals, the non-program food revenue tool is required to be completed annually if the school sells non-program foods. The non-program food revenue tool must demonstrate compliance with the Healthy Hunger Free Kids Act. This compliance demonstrated in the tool ensures that the revenue from the sale of non-program foods generates at least the same proportion of revenue as it contributes to the LEA's food costs. This also ensures that the LEAs are not using program money to subsidize on-program food sales. You can access the non-program food revenue tool, both the 5-day and the extended period tools, through the DESE FNS webpage. First, you will want to access the Guidance and Resources section, then click on the non-program food revenue tool link. This will bring you to the link to the Excel non-program food revenue tools. As you can see here, it also provides a few other resources that can be utilized. I would also like to refer you to the DESE FNS webpage where the non-program food revenue tool webinar is available. This webinar outlines how to complete and understand the tool. We will now discuss the adult meal prices. It is important to ensure that adult meal lunch prices must be at or above the calculated minimum USDA adult meal lunch price requirement. This will ensure compliance with USDA regulations and ensures that the federal reimbursements, students' payment, and other non-designated food service revenues do not subsidize program meals served to adults. As you can see here in our picture, that the minimum adult payment and other sources designated specifically for the support of adult meals both must cover the cost of the adult meal, including the value of USDA entitlement and bonus donated foods. In this slide, you can see the multiple options to calculate adult meal lunch prices and all that must be included in the calculations. Option 1 is for pricing schools. So for schools that charge for student meals, you will take the highest paid student lunch price plus the amount of donated foods, which USDA provides each school year and was $0.3625 for school year 2019-20, plus the federal paid reimbursement. This totals the minimum adult meal lunch price for option 1. Option 2 is for non-pricing schools. So for schools that do not charge for student meals, such as CEP sites, you will use the free reimbursement plus the donated foods to total the adult meal lunch price. Option 3 is the actual per lunch cost. For this option, you will need to calculate the adult meal cost, which includes food, labor, and supplies, etc., plus the value of donated foods to total the adult meal charge. Option 4 is food service management company charges. For schools that contract with a food service management company and are charged a fixed price for each non-student lunch sold, then the LEA has the option to use the amount they are being charged for each fixed price non-student lunch. Once all applicable options have been calculated, the lowest of these options will be the minimum adult meal lunch price. Thusly, the LEA must set their adult meal lunch price at or above the minimum adult meal price that was calculated. For example, you find that option 1 concluded a total of $3.2525 per adult lunch. However, you also found that the food service management company is charging the school $3.35 per non-student lunch sold. Thusly, the option 1 price of $3.2525 will be the minimum adult meal price for the LEA. The LEA cannot round down to $3.25, so please keep in mind that you must always round up when calculating adult meal lunch prices. Now that we concluded calculating the minimum adult meal lunch price, we are going to discuss pricing adult breakfasts. Although not mandatory, the state agency recommends pricing adult breakfasts at or above the free reimbursement rate for breakfast. The LEA has the flexibility to determine the amount to charge adult breakfast. Thusly, you can see here the recommended amounts for school year 1920. The student free reimbursement at a severe needs school is $2.20, which compared to the student free reimbursement rate at a non-severe needs school is $1.84. To access the reimbursement rates for each school year, you can go to the DESE FNS webpage, and you will go down to the Quick Links column and click Reimbursement Rates. Once clicked, the Reimbursement Rates page will pop up, and it provides the reimbursement rates for lunch, breakfast, after-school snack program, special milk program, and the donated foods program. You can find the link to the DESE FNS webpage at the bottom of the screen. We will keep moving forward in the resource management topic to discuss the unpaid meal charge policy. All school food authorities operating the National School Lunch Program must have an unpaid meal charge policy implemented. Please also note that the non-discrimination statement must be included in the policy. The unpaid meal charge policy is used to prevent unpaid meal charges through a number of practices. Each LEA operating the National School Lunch Program must have an unpaid meal charge policy for the district. The NPS will review and compare the approved and implemented policy, interview staff about policy practices, ensure that the policy is provided in writing to each household at the beginning of the school year and households with students that transfer mid-year, as well as ensuring that the policy addresses how the LEAs will reclassify debt. The NPS will also review funding practices to ensure that they meet USDA regulations and that all applicable records are kept on file. Now that we have discussed all the maintenance on the nonprofit school food service account, the PLE requirements, and the revenues from non-program foods, we'll now briefly discuss indirect costs. First, I'm going to compare the indirect costs to direct costs. Indirect costs are incurred for the benefit of multiple programs, functions, or other cost objectives, not clearly identifiable with one program. Direct costs are incurred specifically for a program or other cost objectives, which are clearly identifiable with a specific program. Prior to answering the resource management questions regarding indirect costs, please ensure that the school is in fact practicing indirect costs. The NPS verifies web application answers to the nonprofit school food service account annual financial statement to ensure that it is answered accurately. Outlined on this slide are examples of both indirect costs and direct costs. A few examples of indirect costs are payroll services, human resources, gas, electricity, and water. A few examples of direct costs are wages and salaries of food service employees, food service supplies, and equipment. Again, I would like to refer you to the DESE FNS webpage to access the webinars outlining resource management non-program food revenue tool, the PLE tools, and pricing adult meals. You can access these webinars through the provided link. We will now begin our discussion about the Offsite Review Resource Management Comprehensive Review portion of Web Applications questions. The 4 areas of the comprehensive review are the maintenance of the nonprofit school food service account, the paid lunch equity, the revenue from non-program foods, and indirect costs. The comprehensive reviews must be completed only for the applicable areas. A risk indicator will flag when a section must be completed. So please take note of that and complete the applicable comprehensive review sections. The first section we will discuss is the maintenance of the nonprofit school food service account. A risk flag will appear if the LEA does not have a separate financial account for the nonprofit school foods account, LEAs do not conduct year-end reviews of total revenues and expenses, and identified year-end expenses in excess of revenues, transferred surplus funds out of the school food service account to support other operations and or to achieve zero balance, and the LEA will not measure its compliance with the requirement to limit net cash resources to a level at or below 3 months average expenditures. Any of these risk indicators will indicate a risk flag, which would open up an expanded review of the maintenance of the nonprofit school food service account section. The next section is the paid lunch equity. The risk indicators for this section are as follows. The LEA did not charge the weighted minimum average paid lunch price at all sites, or the LEA did not use the PLE tool to calculate paid lunch prices. The LEA used non-federal funds to support its paid lunch prices. The LEA received an exemption to the PLE requirement, or the LEA did not raise lunch prices as required. Again, any of these risk indicators will indicate a risk flag, which would open up an expanded review of the maintenance of the nonprofit school food service account section. The third comprehensive review section we'll be discussing is the revenue from the non-program food section. The risk indicators for this section are as follows. The LEA does not have a system or process in place that allows non-program food revenue from total program food revenue. The LEA does not have a system or process in place that allows non-program food costs from total program food costs. The LEA did not use the USDA non-program food revenue tool. The SFA's proportion of total revenue from the sale of non-program foods to the total revenue of the school food service account was less than the proportion of total food costs associated with obtaining non-program foods to the total costs associated with obtaining program and non-program foods from the account, or if the LEA chose to use general funds in lieu of or in addition to raising its non-program food prices. Again, any of these risk indicators will indicate a risk flag, which would open up an expanded review of the maintenance of the nonprofit school food service account. The final comprehensive review section is for indirect costs. This section assesses whether the SFA are currently charging indirect costs to the nonprofit school food service account. The only risk indicator for this section is if the nonprofit school food service account was charged for indirect costs. If yes, an expanded review of the indirect cost practices will be examined. We have now completed our discussion regarding the resource management sections, which included the comprehensive reviews of each applicable section. We will now discuss certification and benefit issuance. Under the certification and benefit issuance section, the NPS is required to review a portion of the district's free, reduced, and paid meal benefits and practices. To conduct the certification and benefit issuance review while on site, the LEA must prepare documentation prior to the on-site review. To begin this portion of the review process, the NPS will request the total number of students eligible for free or reduced meal benefits at a specific date. I would like to point out that this is only the total number, not names, of the free and reduced meal benefits for the entire district. This excludes paid meal benefits from being included. Please submit only the total number to the NPS as of the specified date. The NPS will notify the number of students eligible for free/reduced meal benefits being reviewed and the interval to follow when processing the documentation. We will go into more detail regarding the selection process in a few slides. A summary of this process is as follows. First, print the benefit issuance list. Second, follow the outlined interval set by the NPS, which an example will be seen here by selecting each third name on the benefit issuance list beginning with the first name listed. And lastly, highlight each selected student following the previously mentioned interval. I mentioned the benefit issuance list a few times now, however, I think it is best to outline exactly what we are requiring for the review process. The benefit issuance list is a critical part of the selection process. It outlines all the students, district-wide, who are receiving free or reduced meal benefits. This list must include students' names and be organized in alphabetical order by last name. Do not categorize the benefit issuance list by benefit, for example, by free or reduced, nor by building, grade, etc. This list must also exclude the student receiving paid meal benefits, as we do not review but only a few of those applications, which I will go into more detail in a few slides. The method of certification, if that be by application, SNAP benefits as a foster child, homeless, or by extended eligibility, etc., must also be accessible during the on-site review. There must also be documentation of the date of benefit, the date the benefit was issued and or updated. This list should be downloaded from the point of service if applicable to ensure that students are receiving the correct meal benefit. It is also very important that you do not email this list or any other confidential student information to your NPS. Student information is confidential and your NPS will review all student information on site or through tiered monitoring, which they will be in communication with you about. As previously mentioned, here is an example of an interval needing to be used to select which student's information will be reviewed. Here you can find an example of the benefit issuance list. In this example, you will find that the NPS wants every third name highlighted/selected, beginning with the first name. You'll find that the LEA selected Susan Baker, the first name listed, and then proceeded through the benefit issuance list by highlighting the third name. The third name following Susan Baker would be Sydney Burnett, followed by Leah Dunn, and so on. Your NPS will review the related documentation for each of the highlighted students. I will go into that documentation in the next slide. However, this is only an example, so please keep in mind that your NPS will notify you of the interval that will be used during the review process. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact your NPS. The supporting documentation that your NPS will be reviewing for those selected students are as follows: the free and reduced meal application, the direct certification list, which must be the direct download from OSIS as we cannot use a list from a student information system, foster or homeless documentation, as well as the extended eligibility list. I would like to refer you back to the DC list. It is necessary for this documentation to be organized and ready for review prior to the on-site review. We understand this process can be time-consuming, so please make sure to have it ready prior to your NPS's arrival. This will be greatly appreciated. The next off-site topic I will discuss are the verified applications. The verified applications will be reviewed by your NPS for the selected school year. If the on-site review is early in the school year prior to November 15th, the NPS will review the prior school year's verified applications as well as the relating documentation. If the on-site review is after November 15th, the NPS will review the verified applications from the current school year. So please pay close attention to your checklist your NPS will have attached to the email notifying you of the selected school year. The NPS will select 10% or at least 3 free or reduced meal applications to review. This selection is completed randomly while on site, so please have all verified applications accessible to your NPS. The NPS will also review the LEA's calculation process to determine the number of applications to verify, all template letters sent to notify households, the original free or reduced meal application, see proof that the confirmation review took place, and the submitted household income documentation. All of these mentioned documents will be reviewed while on site. As previously mentioned, the NPS will also review a select few applications which were denied free or reduced meal benefits. Please have the denied applications ready for review prior to the on-site review. Your NPS will randomly select a few applications to review while on site to ensure that applications were denied correctly and following civil rights practices. To wrap up the last portion of the off-site review, we will discuss menu documentation. Menu documentation is required to be completed for each administrative review. The menu documentation review is completed to ensure that the daily and weekly minimum ounce equivalent requirements are met for all components. The menu documentation review also ensures that fruit juice and grain-based desserts do not exceed weekly requirements. At least 50% of whole grain products are served each week. A variety of milk is offered at each meal service, and all other National School Lunch and School Breakfast Program requirements are met. Here you can find the meal pattern requirements broken down by breakfast and lunch, grade group, weekly and daily minimum requirements, and food component/dietary specifications. Here you can find the pre-K meal pattern outlined by breakfast, lunch, supper, and snack for the age groups and meal component requirements. Please refer to these meal pattern pages when constructing your menus to ensure that requirements are being met. The first step of the menu documentation review is to collect and submit the required documentation to your NPS for review. The required documentation needed to review the menu are as follows: the menus, which include lunch and breakfast, if applicable, production records for the selected week of review, the applicable child nutrition labels, also known as CN labels, product formulation statements, or nutrition facts labels and ingredients lists, and recipes. Please only provide labels and recipes for the grains and meat alternate items, as we do not need labels or recipes for fruit, vegetable, or milk products. To expand on the required documents needed for the menu documentation review, I will briefly discuss the required labels. First, the child nutrition labels, also known as CN labels, are related to a program that is ran by the FNS of the United States Department of Agriculture in cooperation with Food Safety and Inspection Services and Agriculture Marketing Service and National Marine Fisheries Service. This process of certification provides warranty for products. It also clearly identifies the contribution of a product towards the meal pattern requirements. Program operators must keep records of the original CN labels. If the actual CN label is a laser printed on the carton or cannot be easily removed, then a photocopy of the carton is acceptable, as well as if the actual CN label, photograph, or photocopy of a valid CN label is not available, school program operators may document the CN identification number and the product name on the bill of lading, also known as an invoice. Here you can view an example CN label that can be found on the product's label. Please take notice of the box surrounding the text, which outlines the food product, the product serving size, the crediting information and ounce equivalents for both grain and/or meat alternate, and the statement provided by the USDA. This box also provides the letters CN and the CN identification number. These are all attributes that help distinguish this label as a CN label. You may also encounter a watermarked CN label. If the original CN label from the product carton or the valid photograph or photocopy of the original CN label is not available, program operators may provide the bill of lading, also known as an invoice, containing the product name and a hard copy of the CN label copied with a watermark displaying the product name and the CN number provided by the vendor, or an electronic copy of the CN label with a watermark displaying the product name and CN number provided by the vendor. This is an example of a watermarked CN label. The label will include a brought forward text similar to this one, which states that the label is a sample copy when a CN label is watermarked. I also mentioned the bill of lading, which can be viewed here. The product's name, code, quantity, purchased, date, and more are provided on the bill of lading, so please keep these alternative documents in mind when collecting CN labels. A second document that can be submitted for the menu documentation review is the product's product formulation statement. The product formulation statement, also known as PFS, can be obtained upon request to the food manufacturer. An appropriate product formulation statement will provide specific information about the product and show how the food credits toward the CN meal pattern, citing CN program resources and regulations. All product formulation statements must be signed by the food manufacturer to be valid. Provided is an example product formulation statement that outlines the product and its crediting information as well as the manufacturer's signature. This would be an acceptable document to provide for the menu documentation review. I am sure many of you are using USDA foods on your menu, and if so, you can also find the product's crediting information on the DESE FNS website through the provided link to the USDA foods. Provided is a screenshot of a sample document that can be provided to state the USDA foods crediting information for the menu documentation review. It was previously mentioned that the nutrition facts label and ingredients list can be submitted for a menu documentation review. This is acceptable documentation, however, it is only acceptable for grain-only products, such as sliced bread, brown rice, noodles, and more. But please keep in mind that the nutrition facts label and the ingredient list must be provided, or else the label would not be able to be used for the menu documentation review. If a product is a combination product of meat alternate and grain, then a CN label or product formulation statement must be provided. An example of a combination food item would be if you are wanting to credit the meat alternate and the grain for a breaded chicken patty. You must provide a CN label or product formulation statement for the breaded chicken patty. Typically, the breading contributes to the grain component and the chicken contributes to the meat alternate meal component. And here you can see an example of the nutrition facts label and ingredients list. We will now complete an activity for the menu documentation review. A sample breakfast and lunch menu is provided for a consecutive 5-day period, as would be similar to the selected week of review. Since this week was selected by the NPS for the administrative review, I will need to collect and submit the applicable production records, labels, and recipes. So for this week, I will need to collect daily production records for both breakfast and lunch. Here is a sample production record for Monday's breakfast. Please make sure to complete the entire production record for not only the week of review, but each serving day, as these records are important for numerous situations, such as a future menu planning and forecasting, the auditing purposes, and more. Now that I gathered all my completed production records for the selected week of review, I will review my production record and gather the grains and meat alternate labels which were served on those days. Please use the production records to gather the applicable labels, as I have encountered that last-minute changes to the menu may happen and are not reflected on the month's menus, but are reflected on the production records. So using the production record will ensure that the gathered documents are for the correct grain and meat alternates, and not just for the menu grains and meat alternates. After reviewing my production record for lunch on Monday, I found that the grilled cheese labels and recipes will need to be provided. So I'm going to collect my grilled cheese label, to review the brand that I served to then collect those related labels. So here's my grilled cheese recipe, and I'm verifying the amounts and also the brands of the products that I used to then collect my applicable labels. From the recipe and production records, I concluded that I needed to pull the label for the Pullman sliced bread loaf and the USDA Yellow American cheese labels. Here are the copies of those labels, as you can see, and the Pullman sliced bread loaf does not provide a CN label and is not a product formulation statement. However, it does have a nutrition facts label and ingredients list. Thusly, since the Pullman sliced bread is only crediting for the grain, then I can use this label to credit the sliced bread from my grilled cheese sandwich. It is important that the label contain both the nutrition facts label and the ingredients list, and I check that this label has both, so I am good to go. Since it provides all the required information, it is acceptable documentation, and I can use my Exhibit A calculation to determine how much it credits towards grain. So here's an example of the Exhibit A to calculate the grain crediting amounts. Since I am crediting the sliced bread, I see that it is in Group B. I see that Group B food items credit ounce per ounce and determine that one slice of Pullman sliced bread is 1 ounce, thusly equaling 1 ounce equivalents of grain towards my grain component. However, my grilled cheese sandwich has 2 slices per serving, so I multiply that 1 ounce by 2 to get 2 ounces of grain per grilled cheese sandwich. I also pulled the label for the sliced American cheese that was served in the grilled cheese sandwich. This product is a USDA commodity item, so I can use the state-provided label for this item. I see that this cheese also credits ounce per ounce, so 1 ounce of cheese slice credits 1 ounce towards meat alternate. However, my cheese slices are 1/2 ounce per slice, so 1 cheese slice credits 1/2 ounce equivalents of meat alternate. I am serving 2 slices per serving, so I multiply that by 2 to determine that my grilled cheese sandwich credits 1 ounce equivalents of meat alternate. If you have any questions while getting this documentation together for the review, please do not hesitate to contact your NPS. They will be happy to answer any questions that might arise. As I am sure that many of you are aware of the meal pattern flexibilities established during school year 1920, however, here is an overview of those flexibilities. The first one is a flexibility which allows for the lunch and breakfast programs to serve a minimum of 50% whole grain products each week. The other 50% does not need to be a whole grain product. Second, the flavored low-fat milk can be sold in meal services and as a beverage sale during the school day in addition to unflavored milk. Third, the school breakfast program is allowed to offer a vegetable in place of a fruit to meet the 1 cup fruit daily minimum requirement to children in all age and grade groups. And last, sodium requirements are now practicing Target 1 sodium limits, which can be viewed on the next slide. These flexibilities have not been updated in the 6-cent worksheets, so for both breakfast and lunch, please keep that in mind when completing the 6-cent worksheets. Here you can view the current sodium requirements that are in effect through school year 23 through 24. As you can see here, we are currently practicing the sodium reduction at Target 1 amounts. This is different than the originally approved sodium reduction timeline. Now that we have completed the off-site review sections, we will now dive deeper into each on-site review section. The on-site review will begin with an entrance conference, which consists of the MPS meeting with the authorized rep, including all other individuals who would like to join, to briefly discuss the purpose of the review process, and documents being reviewed while on-site, and the tentative schedule for the day or days the MPS will be conducting the on-site review. Once the entrance conference has been completed, the NPS will begin the on-site review by validating the off-site questions, which were submitted by the school via web applications, to then complete the NPS on-site questions via web applications and complete all meal observations. To complete the on-site review, the NPS will hold an exit conference, similar to the entrance conference, with the authorized rep and all the other individuals that would like to meet. The NPS will present the review results and applicable findings, and also discuss the review process after the exit conference. Typically, the NPS will begin the on-site review by reviewing the certification and benefit issuance documentation, followed by the verification and then meal counting and claiming. This all will usually be reviewed between meal observations to ensure that the review process is completed in a timely fashion. The certification and benefit issuance review will include the free and reduced meal benefit documentation and related documentation being reviewed by the NPS to validate the LEA's procedure from the off-site assessment, ensure that all students receiving free, reduced, or paid benefits were approved according to USDA regulations and civil rights practices, as well as validating that the students are receiving the correct meal benefit. The NPS will also review a sample of verified applications to determine compliance with USDA verification requirements. The NPS will also review the meal counting and claiming offsite submissions and applicable meal counts. The NPS will only review meal counts for the building or buildings being reviewed and the meal services being reviewed for the selected building or buildings. The meal counts must be organized by free, reduced, and paid meals for the entire month being reviewed. The NPS will need to have the total number of meals served for that month, as well as each daily number of meals served broken down by free, reduced, and paid. The meal counts will also be reviewed for the average daily attendance compared to the number of those eligible for free, reduced, and paid meal benefits, and any questionable patterns. These totals will be compared to the submitted claims to ensure accuracy. This is an example daily participation record provided by DESE FNS on the webpage. As you can see here, it breaks down the reimbursable lunches and breakfasts by day and benefit. It also asks for the average daily attendance and attendance factor. During the on-site review, I will be discussing when fiscal action will be taken with each applicable section being reviewed. For this section, fiscal action will be taken if there are miscategorized certifications, benefit issuance errors, and if there is a failure to update a change in status resulting from verification. Fiscal action will also be taken if counting errors were found in the meal counting and claiming section. These counting errors would be if there was no point of service, meal counts do not equal the number of meals served, second and/or ineligible meals were claimed, and meal counts exceed the number or eligible students by category. For more information regarding all fiscal action related to the administrative review, you can access the fiscal action webinar on the DESE FNS webpage through the provided link. The next sections I will discuss are the meal components and quantities, offer versus serve, and dietary specification and nutrient analysis sections on the on-site review. As previously mentioned, meal observations will be conducted during the on-site review. These observations begin prior to the meal service and last throughout the entire meal service to ensure that all reimbursable meal lines offer all required meal components before, during, and at the end of each meal service. The NPS will also be observing meal preparation and a percentage of the meal service for each serving line to ensure proper food handling and program requirements. While observing the meal services, the NPS determines if the meal contains the correct components and quantities for each grade group and that students have access to and know how to select a reimbursable meal. Menu certification documents will also be reviewed if the NPS has any questions about the crediting information for items being served that day. If the SFA is practicing offer versus serve, the NPS will assess whether the SFA is implementing it correctly and that all meals claimed are reimbursable meals. The NPS will also assess whether the reimbursable meals meet dietary specifications and if a nutrient analysis review is necessary. The NPS will also be ensuring that signage is posted explaining what constitutes as a reimbursable meal, and the point of service staff are trained and can recognize a reimbursable meal. Offer versus serve meals must contain a minimum of 3 food components for lunch or food items for breakfast, with one of these components/items are at least a half cup of fruit or vegetable. The NPS will ensure that the staff accurately judge quantities when school utilizes self-serve stations. To the right of the screen is an example of offer versus serve poster which explains how to select a reimbursable meal. As was previously mentioned, the calories, saturated fat, sodium, and trans fat will be reviewed to ensure that dietary specifications are being met. The dietary specifications tool, which was completed by the LEA during the off-site review, will be reviewed by the NPS, and if it is found that the risk score is high, the NPS will conduct a nutrient analysis for lunch and breakfast if applicable. The NPS will also complete their own on-site dietary specifications tool for each building being reviewed. Provided is a screenshot of the dietary specifications assessment tool found in web applications that will be completed by both the LEA during the off-site review and the NPS during the on-site review. Fiscal action will be taken if a meal component is found to be completely missing. Then that meal service would have fiscal action calculated. Repeated violations, such as violations involving milk and missing vegetable subgroups, will require corrective action. If this is a repeat violation from the previous review, fiscal action will be taken. Violations involving whole grain rich foods and more than 50% fruit or vegetable juice will require corrective action. If this is a repeat violation from the previous review, fiscal action may be taken. So please take note of that may. Your NPS will be in communication with you throughout the entire review process and will discuss these violations and possible fiscal action as it arises. We will now move forward to discuss the remaining sections of the on-site review. The first we will be discussing is civil rights. Civil rights regulations are in place to direct sponsors on the proper procedures to follow so that benefits of the child nutrition programs are made available to all eligible persons in a non-discriminatory manner. During the on-site review, the NPS will review the complaint procedure, which includes the accepting, transcribing, and forwarding complaints, the limited English proficiency services provided by the district, the public release, special dietary needs accommodations, the annual civil rights training, annual collection of racial and ethnic data, ensuring the And Justice for All poster is in a publicly visible location for all program participants to view, and that all students have equal access to the program without discrimination. Provided here is the most up-to-date non-discrimination statement that must be provided on all relevant program materials. As you may have noticed, I stated that this is the most up-to-date statement. I say that because during a few reviews, it was noticed that NPSs had the old version in practice. So please take note that the statement has been updated and must be used on all current information and documentation. You will also notice that I have the abbreviated statement circled in red. This abbreviated statement, this institution is an equal opportunity provider, can be used in place of the above statement if there is not enough room on those documents to have the above statement. The next section we will be discussing is the on-site monitoring form. This form is intended for LEAs with more than one school operating the National School Lunch Program. If a LEA is operating National School Lunch Program at more than one school, it is required that the LEA perform document on-site reviews of the lunch counting and claiming systems. This is also applicable to the school breakfast program. However, there is a flexibility to complete the on-site review process at only 50% of schools operating the school breakfast program. This would require that the other remaining 50% of the schools operating the school breakfast program to be completed for the following year to ensure that all schools operating the school breakfast program receive an on-site review every 2 years. These on-site reviews performed by the LEA must be completed annually and prior to February 1st of each school year. Here is a template of the on-site review form. It provides in detail the requirements for the on-site review as well as the questionnaire that can be used by each LEA to document the review. As you can see here, the format is broken down by LEA, building, question, and meal service. Please feel free to adopt this template form for your LEA. It can be accessed through the DESE FNS webpage through the link on the previous slide. I will now discuss the local wellness policy. During the administrative review, the NPS will review a current copy of the local wellness policy. The NPS will ensure that all required components are addressed and the required documents are available to the public. The most recent assessment of implementation of the policy will be reviewed, which with the new final rule is now required to be completed every 3 years. Documentation of review and policy updates, including who was involved in the process and how stakeholders were made aware of their ability to participate, are all documents the NPS will review. A few local wellness policy resources can be found on the DESE FNS webpage through the provided link. Here you can access template policies that can be adapted and implemented at LEAs, as well as the policy requirements and guidance. This is a template policy assessment report that can be adopted and used to complete the triennial assessment of the policy and its implementation. As most of you have heard, but with the current situation with the unexpected school closures due to COVID-19, there has been a flexibility made available to all LEAs. This flexibility allows LEAs to complete the first triennial assessment by June 30th of 2021, when the original due date for this assessment was June 30th, 2020. LEAs choosing to implement this flexibility must notify the state agency and provide the following information: their name, their LEA name, their agreement number, the anticipated completion date of the local wellness policy assessment, the policy contact, email or phone number, and a description of how this waiver improved services to program participants. During the on-site review, the NPS will also review all food and beverages sold on campus during the school day to ensure that they are compliant with USDA Smart Snack regulations. The definition of a school day is from midnight of to 30 minutes after the end of school. These food items that are under the Smart Snack requirement umbrella are a la carte items, vending machines, school stores and cafes, fundraisers, and more. During the review and observation of Smart Snack food products, the NPS will interview the school district staff and food service staff to gain understanding of all food and beverage sales. The NPS will also request to review the nutrition documentation for those items to ensure that they are meeting requirements. Smart Snack requirements are as follows. If it's a grain product, it must contain 50% or more grains by weight. The first ingredient, a fruit, vegetable, dairy, or protein product. The combination food items contain at least 1/4 cup of fruit and or vegetable and meet nutrient standards for calories, sodium, sugar, and fats. And that can be seen to the right as well. Provided is a screenshot of the DESE FNS webpage where numerous Smart Snack resources can be accessed. I highly recommend reviewing this information as it can be very beneficial when navigating Smart Snacks regulations. One resource that is located on the DESE FNS webpage is the Smart Snacks Calculator. This calculator is a tool that is used to determine if a food or beverage product meets Smart Snacks requirements. I use this tool often to double-check products while conducting an administrative review. The calculator is very user-friendly and requires that the following be specified to determine if it is compliant or not. The calculator asks for the type of food item, if it is consumed as a snack, a side, entree, or beverage, if the item is a fruit, vegetable, dairy, protein, or whole grain product, and what grade group has access to these items. It then will ask a few more questions regarding the product. It will ask for the nutrition facts information, which you can see to the right, and this is where you would input that information from the food products label. All that is needed here is to input that information, and the calculator will then provide that product's results. Once the results are provided, please save a copy, and also please save a copy of the food products label and keep those on file. Another resource that can be found on the DESE FNS Smart Snacks webpage is information regarding school fundraisers. School fundraisers apply to food and beverages sold to students during the school day on the school campus, and all foods and beverages sold as fundraisers. It is very important that organizations planning fundraisers work as a team with their school administration before initiating a fundraiser to ensure compliance with the LEA's local wellness policy, Smart Snacks requirements, and all other local policies. Within Smart Snacks requirements, there is a set maximum limit of 5 exempt fundraisers per building per school year with a duration of 1 day. However, the sale of frozen pizza, cookie dough, and other food items pre-ordered and distributed in a pre-cooked state or in bulk quantities, which include multiple servings in a package for consumption at home, is not required to meet these standards. So please keep all of this in mind when reviewing the food and beverage sales at your district. This is the exempt fundraiser tracking sheet. All fundraisers for the district that are exempt must be tracked in order to ensure compliance with Smart Snack requirements. One example practice that I have seen is that a staff member in the district is a designated tracker, and that individual receives fundraiser submissions throughout the entire school year from all of the buildings. So the building principals submit their fundraiser ideas to that staff member, who will then either approve or deny the request. If the fundraiser was approved, the staff member would document the fundraiser's exemption and keep that on file. For other ideas, please contact the state agency and we would be happy to assist. We will now discuss the professional standards portion of the on-site review. The NPS will verify that training standards are being met and tracked for all staff with duties related to food service. The NPS will verify the number of staff, such as the food service director, the manager or managers, full and part-time staff members, and all non-school nutrition staff with duties related to the program. The NPS will ensure that all employees are receiving the correct amount of training hours that correspond to their job title, and that hiring standards are met for all new directors. This is a summary of the required training hours for all school nutrition program employees. For example, you can see here that the food service director is required to earn 12 hours of training each school year. You can find more professional standard resources and training opportunities through the provided link to the DESE FNS webpage. During the past school year, a few flexibilities were put into place regarding the hiring standards for food service directors by allowing state agencies to consider applicants with either a bachelor's or advanced degree in specified fields. Access training hours are allowed to be carried over to an immediate previous or an immediate subsequent school year, as long as a reasonable amount of training occurs in each school year. Acting personnel, temporary workers, substitutes, and volunteers do not require to complete training hours. Please access this form through the provided link to then complete and submit to the state agency if you wish to practice the Food Service Director Professional Standards exemption. This is only required for LEAs with enrollment less than 500 and a candidate has a high school diploma and less than the required 3 years of work experience. This is a screenshot of the DESE FNS webpage that provides numerous webinars that can be accessed to complete required professional standards annual requirements. Please keep in mind to complete applicable trainings that relate to your job duties. Next, the NPS will be ensuring that all program participants have access to free potable water during lunch and breakfast meal services. This can be provided by pitchers and cups, water fountains, faucets to fill water bottles or cups, and many more other options. But please keep in mind that the water requirement is only applicable for breakfast when breakfast is served in the cafeteria. During the on-site review, a thorough review of food safety will be completed. The NPS will review the written food safety plan, also known as the HACCP plan or Standard Operating Procedures. They will review that all applicable areas are covered in the adopted plan and implemented in each kitchen. It is required that this plan be accessible in each kitchen. The NPS will also review the food safety inspections to ensure that the SFA received 2 each school year and that the most recent inspection report is posted in a publicly visible location. While reviewing the food safety inspections, the NPS will also request to review records related to food preparation and handling, such as cooking, reheating, holding, and cooling logs, as well as equipment and facility logs for receiving deliveries, freezer, refrigerator, dry storage temperatures. The NPS will also require to inspect the on-site and off-site storage facilities to ensure proper food storage, temperatures, first in, first out practices, and more. To find more resources regarding food safety, please access the DESE FNS webpage through the provided link. Next, the Buy American provision will be reviewed. The Buy American provision requires all LEAs to purchase domestic agricultural commodities or products that are produced and processed in the United States. These products include pasta, canned and frozen vegetables and fruit, refrigerated foods, and frozen meat/entree items. However, the exemption to this provision is if the products are too costly or not available in the required quantities. In order for this exemption, LEAs must consider domestic alternatives prior to practicing the exemption. LEAs must keep backup documentation justifying the use of the exemptions for purchasing non-domestic food items. Provided is the DESE FNS document that can be used to record the Buy American exemptions. This document outlines the date of use, the food item description, the country of origin, and the justification behind the use of the non-domestic product. This must be kept on file at the LEA. Please use the provided link to access this form on the DESE FNS webpage. The school breakfast program and summer food service program will be reviewed to ensure that families are being informed of the program availabilities at the LEA. Please keep that in mind when preparing the requested documentation being reviewed. Last but certainly not least, I will briefly discuss the importance of reporting and record keeping. It is very important that reports are submitted as requested to the state agency. These reports and documents must be maintained with other program records for a period of 3 years plus the current year after the submission of the final claim for reimbursement for the fiscal year. In addition to the sections that were just discussed, I will briefly summarize the community eligibility provision, the after-school snack program, the fresh fruit and vegetable program, and the seamless summer option in future slides. These programs are optional and will be reviewed if the LEA is participating. I will now briefly discuss the AR process for LEAs that are operating as CEP district-wide. The NPS will review the certification documentation used to determine the identified student percentage, also known as ISP. The NPS will also review base year documentation, which includes direct certification lists, documentation for extension of eligibility, official documentation for homeless, foster, migrant, Head Start, and other categorical eligibility documentation used to determine the ISP base year ISP roster of enrolled students, as well as documentation of total enrollment used to establish the ISP. These documents are required to be uploaded to tiered monitoring as well as kept on file at the participating districts. For LEAs only operating CEP district-wide, Please keep in mind that you will still be required to complete the verification report and web applications each school year. For LEAs operating both the standard operating procedures and CEP, the review process will be slightly different. The NPS will validate the LEA's procedures from the offsite assessment tool, student certification, denied applications, as well as review all base year documentation pertaining to the ISPs, as was previously mentioned. During the review, at least one CEP site will be selected for an abbreviated review. An abbreviated review is basically where the NPS verifies the claiming percentages were applied correctly to the monthly claim for reimbursement. In addition to these documents, the NPS will also need to review the applications that were verified. So for sites that are not operating CEP, the verification process must be completed. A sample of these applications selected for verification will be reviewed while on site. Next, I will discuss the after-school snack program. If the LEA is approved for the after-school snack program, the LEA is allowed to serve snacks after school. The NPS will verify the LEA's eligibility, that accurate counting and claiming procedures are in place, that snacks meet program requirements. It will review production records and labels for the selected 5-day period and confirm that the SFA is monitoring the program activities at least twice per year. The program must be monitored within the first 4 weeks of the program operating. The second can be completed any time throughout the program operations, just as long as it is completed twice within that school year. The NPS will conduct either a documentation review or observe the after-school snack program while on site. Your NPS will discuss which they will be practicing during the entrance conference. After the after-school snack program is complete, the NPS will also notify you of any possible fiscal action that was accumulated from the program. Fiscal action will be calculated if the school claims meals for adult or ineligible students, if there is a missing component, or if the snack is not served after school. You can find more after-school snack program guidance on the DESE FNS webpage. Here you will find the DESE FNS provided after-school snack program production record. The top portion outlines the portion sizes for each age group and component, and the bottom section is where you record the food item and portion size served. This production record can be accessed through the provided link. Here is a screenshot of the on-site monitoring form for the 2 reviews conducted by the LEA of the after-school snack program. The forms outline the program requirements regarding the monitoring, as well as provides questions to be answered to ensure that the program was reviewed in full. The next program I will discuss is the Fresh Fruit and Vegetable program. LEAs must apply to participate in the Fresh Fruit and Vegetable program, and if approved, is granted funds to serve fresh produce to their students during the school day and outside the breakfast and lunch meal services. The NPS will review the program to ensure participating LEAs are managing the federal funds correctly and meeting all program requirements. The 3 components of the Fresh Fruit and Vegetable program review are as follows: reviewing the sample size that was established, validate the claims by reviewing 1 month's claim by comparing it to invoices and reviewing administrative and program costs, as well as observing the fresh fruit and vegetable meal service and preparation. The NPS will notify you of the site that they will be reviewing prior to the on-site review. Fiscal action will be taken for the fresh fruit and vegetable program if fruit is not fresh, dips are provided for fruits, dips for vegetables are not low fat, and if program food is provided to an ineligible school or to ineligible students or adults. Again, the NPS will be in communication with you throughout the review process if this was to arise. Next, I will briefly discuss the Seamless Summer option. The Seamless Summer option will be reviewed if the LEA is participating in the Seamless Summer option and if the LEA is due for an administrative review that same year. For example, the Seamless Summer option will be reviewed the summer of 2020 if an administrative review was conducted during the 2019 and 20 school year. The review will involve at least one meal service observation, the menu documentation review, review of advertising materials as well as signage, and ensuring that LEA is advertising the availability of free meals in its locations to children in the community. Fiscal action will be added to the administrative review fiscal action if applicable. The NPS has now officially reviewed all portions of the administrative review and can now consider the on-site review complete. So the NPS will conduct an exit conference on the last day of the on-site review. This exit conference is a time for the LEA and NPS to discuss program results and applicable violations, as well as ask questions to ensure that everyone is on the same page. The NPS will be in communication with you throughout the entire review process and at the exit conference to discuss the preliminary assessment of the actions needed to correct the applicable violation or violations. The NPS will also discuss the corrective action plans, required documents, and the time frame that must be completed and provided on web applications. I will now discuss what will happen after the on-site review has been completed. The NPS will complete all work on the administrative review and submit it to be reviewed by the state supervisors. Once reviewed and everything is approved, the NPS will notify the school district of review findings. This notification will happen via email and is sent to the authorized representative and the food service director. This notification will include the date of review and exit conference, the review findings, corrective action plan, as well as step-by-step instructions to accessing corrective actions, time frame for completion of corrective actions, and potential fiscal actions. Within those step-by-step instructions to access the corrective actions, you will see a screenshot like this one. This screenshot is taken from web applications and the corrective action link is circled. Here you can click Modify to then begin completing the findings. LEAs have 30 calendar days after notification from your NPS to complete and submit corrective actions. Once all actions have been approved, a closing letter will be sent via email to the authorized representative and food service director notifying of the review being closed. The state agency will publicly post a summary of the administrative review report on the DESE website. After this process is complete, the next administrative review will take place in 5 years. This concludes the administrative review presentation. For more information regarding the administrative review, please refer to the provided link as well as all links provided throughout the presentation. Please also feel free to contact us at 573-751-3526 or at Food and Nutrition Services at dese.mo.gov. We would be happy to answer any questions that might arise. Thank you for your time and have a good day.